Just personally offended for being called out. Luckily, my mom was like, yeah, I don't see any problem here. There was something that happened that my friends and I didn't handle well. But instead of talking to everyone involved and maybe teaching us how we could have handled it better, like a teacher is supposed to, Mrs. K chose to humiliate my friend group in front of the entire class. There were about 6 of us who had become pretty close friends. Basically, we'd always hang out at recess and ask each other really deep philosophical questions like, wouldn't it be weird if milk was green? But then we'd realize that it wouldn't, because if milk was green, then that would be normal, and white milk would be weird. Whoa. One time I used the phrase personal space bubble, and someone thought the word bubble was particularly funny for some reason. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it became an inside joke, and before long we ended up just calling our group the bubble. But it turns out that names are a powerful thing, and after a few months the entire class knew that we had one, and they wanted in. We never set out to be exclusionary. It was just an inside joke that other kids overheard. So when someone who none of us knew very well came up at lunch and asked if he could join the bubble, it was like, that's not really how this works. He just wanted to make friends, but it was a question that we hadn't even considered, and for lack of a more thoughtful response, we kind of just awkwardly told him no. That rejection really upset him, especially after he must have worked up the courage to come ask us in the first place. So he went, crying, to Mrs. K. Instead of taking us aside and talking to us about what happened in private, she called us out in front of the entire class. She said something to the effect of, I've been hearing all about the bubble for months, and now I understand that you're going around and telling kids that they can't be in it. Then I'll never forget that she pointed at me and said, I'm popping the bubble. What does that even mean? She didn't talk through things with us and set reasonable expectations. She was just like, yep, I popped the bubble. Problem solved. If she had taken the time to understand what was really going on, she could have helped us work through a better way to handle it and set a good example for the class. But no, she singled us out in front of everyone and set a terrible example. Now how am I supposed to be a good person? Sorry for getting so bad. Let's end this on a high note. Bye.
Bro, please. No, my feet's not even on you. It's never been on you. Your feet's been on my leg.
Will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Making friends can be hard. Or maybe I'm just really bad at it. Probably both. So here's a bunch of times I tried to make friends and it went horribly wrong. If I can't make friends, at least I can make content. When I was in college, I decided to do what any self-disrespecting nerd does. Join the chess club. That seemed like a good way to...
Google Ads helps you turn curiosity into customers who are interested in what your business has to offer. Now you can reach people based on what matters most to them at just the right moment. Google Ads. Turn curiosity into customers. Visit ads.google.com to learn more.
I want to practice my builds. Because I know there's going to be a lot of sweats playing. Am I right, Jaden? I know there's going to be a lot of sweats, so I'm going to practice my builds. Why am I getting XP?
As an idiot for 3 months now, and let me tell you, I feel like a new pup. To start, my interviews through the roof. Basically, the same fault.
This episode is sponsored by Oh, I almost didn't hear you there! I was listening to an audiobook! You're not really here! Did you know you can read with your ears? Ear reading! With Audible, you get a free audiobook every month! What are you waiting for? The Plus catalog has everything! Podcasts, guided fitness and meditation programs, and more. And you can get a 30-day free trial to see if you like it. One audiobook that I've been having a lot of fun listening to is How To by Randall Monroe. Basically, he explains how to do perfectly normal things. But it's free! Go to audible.com/TimTom or text TimTom to 500-500 to try Audible today. Long-distance relationships suck. I once dated a girl for a whole year, but we only hung out in person for 4 weeks. Does a month count as a real relationship? Probably not. It was the worst. But I got a trip to England out of it, so we'll call it a wash. To be clear, the girl I was dating, we'll call her Shmanda, was actually really nice. But being in wildly different time zones made finding time to talk a nightmare, and being poor high school students meant saving up for flights to see each other would take roughly forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One of my friends in high school, we'll call her Schmarley, used to live in England, and while she lived there, she made some friends, as you do. But then, her family moved back to the and her friends didn't come with her. Typical. Fast forward a few years, and one of Schmarley's British friends decided to come visit. Naturally, Schmarley introduced her old friend to her new friends. That's me, which is how I met my future British ex-girlfriend. When we all met up for the first time, we thought it would be a good idea to get some grocery store fried chicken. You know, the good stuff. And have a little picnic while we got to know each other. But there was some miscommunication, and we didn't get everyone together until it was already dark out. And the chicken was cold. Also, we forgot paper plates and napkins. So there we were, a bunch of 17-year-olds sitting around a picnic table in the dark,
That's weird.
trying not to get chicken grease.
Oh wait, there was a black cat. Be careful of that boy in Halloween.
I didn't really know what she looked like,
Alright.
how dark it was. I had a crush almost immediately. You see, there was this thing. So when she
The weirdest myth ever.
I liked how it sounded. Look, I just have a small brain, and when it was a British accent, it goes, oh, that's pretty. We didn't get to hang out for long, but after she left, we stayed in touch. Eventually, I got up the courage to tell her that I had a bit of a crush on her, and to my surprise, she told me that on the night we first hung out, she thought to herself, blimey, he's the funniest guy I ever met, governor. We lived almost 5,000 miles apart from each other. Neither of us had a job, but for some reason, we thought it would be a good idea to date. Spoiler, it wasn't. She lived 7 hours ahead of me, and our school schedules didn't really align, so it was basically impossible to talk at normal hours. I remember regularly staying up late to call and talk while she got ready for school. Now, my sleep schedule has never been great. That year was by far the worst it's ever been, and honestly, it took a massive toll on me. I even ended up failing a few classes because of how zonked I was. And again, none of this was her fault. I was a dumb kid in love. What was I supposed to do? Not talk to her constantly? I know I say this all the time, but just because you're young doesn't mean your feelings aren't real. There was very little reason for either of us to feel this way. But for the 2 years between that late night chicken picnic and eventually closing that chapter in our lives, we had an extremely close connection to each other, which is the other reason long-distance relationships suck. Being separated from each other was excruciating. Like, I spent the better part of a year just yearning. I yearned so hard. Hey, Tim, what you doing after school? Oh, nothing much. I'm just gonna go home and yearn. Ugh, don't even get me started on the longing. I yearned and longed for days at a time, and that's just no way to live. Anyway, we talked as much as we could. She introduced me to the wonders of British television. I told her facts about the solar system. Pretty normal romantic stuff. Did you know that it takes less energy to leave the solar system from Earth than it does to fly into the sun? That's pretty sexy. I saved what I could, and after graduation, I had enough to go visit. Someone told me that to travel internationally, you need a passport and a visa. Not like the credit card, but a thing from England that says you're allowed to be there. So I bought my plane ticket, I got my passport, and I applied for a visa. Then, about a week before the trip, I got a letter saying my visa application was denied. Nice. That's when I decided to Google it. I remember it said that you don't need a visa for a short visit, but it didn't say how long short was. Thanks, Google. Is that a day? A week? I don't know, but I already had my plane ticket. So despite the British government having directly told me that I couldn't go, I did a little thing called do it anyway. I was pretty sure that all I needed was a signed letter from her mom saying I had a place to stay. There was one tiny little baby problem. Her family was on holiday that week, and they didn't have cell service. To get that letter, I'd have to break out my master hacking skills. We'd have a small window of opportunity between when she was scheduled to get home and when I'd be boarding my flight. I had a week to solve this puzzle, but the plan was simple. Find out if one of her neighbors had a fax machine. Shmanda would get home, print and sign the letter, then run down the street to a neighbor who had already been briefed on the time-sensitive situation, and whose fax machine would be revved up and ready to go. Then on my way to the airport, I'd swing by my mom's office, pick up the letter from their fax machine, and be on my way. Google, guide my mess. I looked up the street she lived on and found someone in the most random way. A dog show judge lived 2 houses away and had a phone and fax number listed online. So I called a complete stranger in another country and asked if my girlfriend could use their fax machine. Of course, it should be no surprise that it totally worked. Nice. So I got the letter, got on a plane, and made it to England. The lady who interviewed me before I was allowed to leave the airport asked if I had ever been denied entry to the UK. I wasn't sure if my rejected visa counted since I didn't technically need it in the first place, so I said no, and then she walked away. Okay, I'll just wait here, I guess. Oh, I should. Can't believe I thought they'd let me into the country with a fax and a smile. Anyone can get at least one of those. But she came back and I was free to go. Something about riding in a car makes me tired, and I didn't get great sleep on the plane, so when I got in my girlfriend's mom's car, I passed out immediately. In fact, I was pretty jet-lagged the entire trip, so I fell asleep in the back of her car practically every time we went anywhere. It made the trip feel like a dream. Wake up? Oh, the London Eye. Back to sleep. Wake up? Ah, cheeky Nando's. Back to sleep. Wake up? Wow. A third thing. We went to Brighton Pier, and there were some dudes trying to parkour over the rail to the rocky beach below, but a few of them were too scared to drop. Being a bit of a treseur myself, I decided to show off and make the jump without hesitating. At first, they looked down in amazement, but I just had to open my dumb American mouth and say, "It was easy, guys." One of them must not have been super stoked to be shown up by a dumb American, because as I climbed the stairs to leave, a rock hit me straight in the face. You might suck at parkour, but dude's got an arm. I'm not even mad. The accuracy was astonishing. That whole trip was easily one of my favorite life experiences, but it was over before I knew it. Back to yearning, I guess. Eventually, my girlfriend saved enough to return the favor and come visit me for 2 weeks. But flights were cheaper into San Francisco, so my mom and I drove down to California to pick her up and thought we could do some sightseeing while we were there. I only remember one thing from that trip, and it has haunted me ever since. We were at a gift shop in Fisherman's Wharf, which I know sounds more like a Pokemon than a neighborhood, but stick with me, this is important. My mom was chatting with the shop owner, and when I walked over to them, she introduced me. He noticed that I was tall and said, "You must play basketball." But when I told him I didn't, he replied without missing a beat, "Ah, so computers." Yeah. Wait, do all tall people either play basketball or like computers? Because I love computers. How did he know? At
Wait,
first, I
what?
thought maybe my mom said something, but apparently she didn't. This man took one look at me and read me like a book. Did he have some kind of Terminator vision? What else did he know? Unfortunately, we left before it set in just how much I needed to know how he knew. Computers are like my whole thing, dude. It couldn't have been a lucky guess, right? Am I really that obvious? What does it all mean? Who am I? Anyway, the rest of her visit was much less ominous, and we had a lot of fun. Then she went back to England, I got my first job, and we both got busy with other things. We didn't have time to talk as much as we used to, and slowly but surely, we drifted apart. One day, I asked if maybe we should just be friends, and she said yes. We still talked occasionally, but at some point, she went on another holiday without internet access, and we just didn't end up talking when she got back. I hope she's doing okay. A few years later, I was in San Francisco again, and I tried to find that gift shop so I could talk to the guy. But it turns out the gift shop had been burned down for 40 years. Ooh. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month.
Drinking ice water flushes 67 pounds of fat. People are...
When I was in elementary school, to save money, my mom and I shared socks. As you can imagine, an adult woman has slightly larger feet than a literal child, and I had enough room to put both feet in there. Pull it up like a sleeping bag. Teacher says, "Timothy, what are you doing?" I say, "I'm setting up camp." Even worse, she only had crew cut, the ones that come up over your calf. But that's too itchy. I got sensitive leg hairs, you know? My little guys need to breathe. Problem is, I'm 7 years old. I'm unemployed. My credit is terrible. I can't afford new socks. So I did the only thing I could. I scrunched them down. That polyester's not going anywhere. It bunched up thick, like it was mad at me. It looked like I was smuggling a fabric store in my shoes. A full-on Joann's in my Vans. I looked like I was wearing ankle warmers. Nobody's seen those since the 80s. I was like a time traveler, getting ready to jazzercise. We also saved money by not getting too many haircuts. Back when I had hair, it was thick, strong, voluptuous. We'd only get it cut once or twice a year, but at that point, it's not really about fashion, it's more like shearing a woolly animal. If you don't get clipped at least once a year, it'll get in your eyes, you'll overheat in the sun, you're vulnerable to predators. So my mom took me to Supercuts. The lady walked me back to her chair and asked what kind of haircut I wanted. In that moment, I had two problems. One, I was scared, because an adult had just asked me a question, and to this day, I do not know how to cope with that situation. And two, at that point in my life, I had yet to accumulate much hair-related knowledge. I only knew the name of one hairstyle. It was like I had only unlocked a single dialogue option. My fashion level was too low, so I gave the only answer I was prepared to give. I asked for a bowl cut. I can't decide if that stylist is pure evil or the funniest woman alive, because she didn't question it once. That lady got to work. I came back to the waiting area looking like Vector from Despicable Me. My mom was stunned. There must be some mistake. What have you done to my boy? I was also unprepared for this situation. Would fixing my mistake cost extra? I couldn't risk that. No, mother, I told her. I wanted this. I never made good choices when it came to my hair as a kid. For some reason, I thought a middle part was a good idea. I'm sure some people can pull that off. Not also a world-famous Korean singer. And at this rate, I may never be. I'm Jay Hopeless. I looked like discount Matt Damon from the 90s. Bad Will Hunting. They say symmetry is beautiful, but I guess they are a bunch of liars because somehow I still end up stuck at the bottom of the social ladder. No, it's okay. You guys go on up. I'll just stay down here in my bowl cut and clown socks. I looked like that every day for years. And honestly, I feel so betrayed. My friends, my family, my teachers, every single one of them stabbed me in the back. That whole time, not a single one made fun of me. It took me years to be properly ashamed of myself. But if even one of my teachers had the courage to bully me, or the decency to do it in front of the whole class, that would have made such an important difference in my life. If there are any teachers in the audience, please remember that your students are counting on you. If you don't tell them how ugly their tiny bodies are, who will? I could have been spared from what may be the most embarrassing fashion choice of all time. When I was in high school, my friends were the types of people to run track, play soccer, do parkour. Running was at the center of it all, which was perfect for me. As luck would have it, puberty had just decided to stretch my legs out like a couple of Laffy Taffies. Now, I don't know if there's a manager around or a number I should call, but I got a few complaints. One, did you ever consider slowing it down? Cool your jets, Turbo. These are leg bones, not bamboo shoots. You pulled my hamstrings tight like you were making a crossbow. Now I can't touch my toes. Two, I got stretch marks all down my thighs because my own skin couldn't keep up. That one's not a joke. That's my life. And three, just the legs, huh? Didn't think maybe you should spread the tallness around a bit? What was your thought process? You see a Tim Burton film and think of a cool prank? Real mature, puberty. So anyway, I'm super fast. In high school, that became part of my identity. But that's a double-edged sword. For one thing, being appreciated for something that's part of who you are gives you a sense of fulfillment. But when something threatens what you've tangled your identity with, that makes it feel personal, even when it's not. So I identified as a runner, and naturally read a few books about it. In particular, one about running barefoot. It said that millions of years of evolution made the human foot good enough on its own. Wearing shoes was like walking around in a cast. Your muscles will atrophy. Running barefoot supposedly strengthens muscles you didn't even know you had. I was sold. Around that time, I had also been playing a parkour game called Mirror's Edge. The main character wore red split-toe climbing shoes that I thought looked cool. It was a perfect storm that swept me up into the worst fashion choice anyone has ever made. I bought toe shoes. They make it feel like you're running barefoot with none of the techness. Of course, I knew they would turn some heads, but I figured if people were going to stare anyway, I might as well go all in. I shouldn't be afraid to try something new, so I let Mirror's Edge be my guide. I took a stand. I was brave, and I ordered the brightest red toe shoes I could find. God bless America. Soon after, track practice was set to begin. I showed up the first day proudly wearing my spicy new foot gloves. Surely my fellow runners would know all about the latest trends sweeping our nation. The coach singled me out. Tim Tom, you need running shoes. Well, these are my running shoes. Nope, go change. I was devastated. I had really gone out on a limb to try something new, and being instantly rejected sucked. I had tangled my identity in this without even realizing it, so even though only the shoes were the problem, it felt like I was. But I'm a trooper, you know? I went back to that locker room, changed my shoes, and quit forever. These days, I've given up on fashion. After I started making cartoons, I just bought a bunch of green shirts and called it a day. Now, I am a cartoon. So consider subscribing. Feed me. I used to be scared of a lot of things, and I still am. Just kidding. I think most of the things I've been afraid of in my life are pretty normal. I used to be scared of the dark. I still kind of have a fear of spiders. And of course, I'm scared that soon I'll be forgotten, so everything I do might be meaningless. I'm also afraid of heights, I think. Like, okay, you know that feeling you get when you're at the top of a building and you look down and your whole stomach goes... Well, that's your body telling you to be afraid and careful and also maybe hate. Get down from that. Stop it. Well, I think I got some wires crossed in my brain because the first time I felt my stomach do that, I was like... Well, that's interesting. Whenever I'd go to the mall, I'd make it a point to walk near the railings on the second floor and look over the edge to see if I could get my tummy to do the thing. And it would be like, to do the thing. But now, I don't really get that feeling unless I'm really high up, which is a shame. Going to the mall used to be like riding a roller coaster, and now it's like going shopping. Gross. I think the Mall of America has a roller coaster in it, but that's in Minnesota, so I can't go because I'm afraid of spending all my money on plane tickets. I've never been afraid to fly, though, because you're more likely to get hurt while driving, and I do that all the time. Besides, when the plane takes off, you feel like you're in a race car, you get free snacks, and when you hit turbulence, your tummy does the thing. Whee! But I am scared of small spaces, I think. Like, okay, my old house had a linen closet with little built-in shelves, and when the door shut, there was still a little space in there. And when I was like 10, I was small enough to just squeeze in. You'd think that would trigger all of the claustrophobia, but since I could open the door, it wasn't scary. But then one time, I showed my sister that I could fit in there, and she held the door shut until I cried and begged her to let me out, and then she laughed at me for crying. Luckily, most fears seem to fade as you get older, but sometimes the opposite can happen. So that's fun. As a teen, I was never afraid of needles or blood, and I was kind of proud of that. I was like, I'm not afraid of needles or blood, and I'm kind of proud of that. But then it turns out that things change, which, side note, who thought that was a good idea? And now when I get my blood drawn or even think about needles, my skin starts to crawl and my hands get real weak. And look, they're not too strong to begin with, so how exactly do you expect me to hold on to this orange juice? The Red Cross? I know I got the good blood, and I want to save lives too, but you've been calling me like a jealous vampire ex-girlfriend for the past 3 months, and it's got me so worked up that I'm not even sure if that last line makes sense. Do vampires get jealous?
I wanted to suck your blood. But not anymore.
A lot of people are scared of earthquakes, which is fair because they destroy buildings and trigger tsunamis, but I've been in enough small ones where nothing happened that I think I've learned to have the exact wrong reaction when the ground starts shaking. Whee! I'm also not afraid of elevators like some people, because like planes, they're really safe. But one time I was in an elevator during an earthquake and the doors got stuck for a bit. I thought we were going to be trapped for longer, and that was kind of scary. But then the doors popped open and I was like, I've learned nothing! I wonder what other not scary things you can combine to make a scary thing. I'm not afraid of cats or dogs, but the show Cat Dog kept me up as a kid. How do they poop? A car with legs would be pretty terrifying, but that doesn't exist. It's probably no surprise that the thing I've been most afraid of in my life is horror movies. They're designed to scare you, and as a kid, I would get wrapped up in the lore and completely believe everything the movie said. All the other kids are like, haha, ooh, spooky, and I'm sitting there taking notes like, so you can contact your dead wife with a tape recorder, but demons will haunt and kill you. Fascinating. And I'm not gonna lie, after watching a horror movie, when the house is real dark, the rest of the family is asleep, and there's a gentle creak in the hallway, my heart still does a little drum fill. But at least now that I'm a grown-up, I know it's probably just a clown, and they only want to see you smile. Forever. Haha, 2 videos in 2 days. That's gotta be some kind of record. Also, I have exciting news. My friend Coco Bean just started a channel, and she's already made a ton of really good videos. She's the one who voiced the jealous vampire. Anyway, I was in her newest video, so go check that out and consider subscribing. I know she would really appreciate it. Okay, bye. This story begins before I was born. The year is 1990, and a retired couple has just moved into a brand new home, only to discover, heavens to Betsy, it didn't come with any window blinds. So to make a little extra money, they decided to do some babysitting and put an ad in the newspaper. Back in my day, the internet came in the mail. Meanwhile, my mother was about to return to work after maternity leave. My brother and her brand new baby daughter, my sister, needed a daycare. My mom worked in sales at a greeting card company, so she spent a lot of time driving between stores to check what kinds of cards they were running out of. You know, happy birthday, sorry your grandma died, that sort of thing. But spending so much time in the car is not terribly fun. So she started looking at various daycares, evaluating them, investigating if you will. You can't expect her to leave her brand new baby just anywhere. Maybe one of those used babies with a few scratches already, but the new ones need a screen protector at least. The first place Mom Tom visited was a licensed in-home daycare. The lady running the place warmly welcomed her in. She would have offered a place to sit if literally every surface wasn't piled high with papers, laundry, and various garbagey bits of garbage. A baby was crawling in a literal pile of dirt in the kitchen as a feral-looking dog stepped over him. Where did you get licensed? The back of a Walmart? In the words of Lemongrab, it was not great. And almost every place she went to had the same vibe or wasn't open late enough. After weeks of searching, she had nothing. Personally, I think the feral dog would have been a great babysitter, but what do I know? Eventually, she looked in the local newspaper where she found just one ad for childcare. We'll babysit in your home 2 kids. And my mom was ecstatic. I can hardly contain myself. Now, I don't remember this because I didn't exist yet, but she called the number and asked the lady about babysitting and if they could meet up. In the background, you could hear her shout, "Dad, are we going anywhere today?" No. I guess after years of raising their own kids, Harry and Emma had just gotten used to calling each other Dad and Mom. They agreed to meet, so my mom dressed my sister up in the cutest pink dress she could find, hoping it would distract from her horns. And it worked. Emma would babysit, but just for a bit, until she made enough to get blinds. Well, a few months turned into a few years. My mom got married, and soon after, I was born. Emma was there to give me my first gift, a stuffed blue bear. Later, when I learned to talk, the only other bear I knew was Winnie the Pooh, so I called him Blue Pooh. But Emma wasn't having any of this new baby business. She told my mom, I can't watch another baby. You'll just have to find someone else. And find someone else she didn't. Unlike with my sister, this time her maternity leave ended the second we rolled out of the hospital. So if Emma wasn't gonna babysit me, I had no choice but to go to work. I may be only a week old, and I may be easily mistaken for a weird little potato, but my country, nay, my mommy needs me. My job was to sit in a comfy little stroller and sleep all day. A few days into Take Your Potato to Work month, a random lady came up and, without even asking, pulled the cover back on the stroller. Oh, let me see your baby. Oh, well, I better go. I'm not feeling well. What the She just coughed in my little baby face. Needless to say, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. When Emma heard what happened, she said, well, you have no business taking that baby to work. You just leave him with me till you find someone else to look after him. And the way I like to tell the story is that's when she fell in love with me. A few weeks later, my mom still hadn't found anyone, and Emma goes, well, you just stop looking right now. You can find somebody when he's a little older. He doesn't need some stranger coming in here. For years, my mom would ask if she should find somebody else, and Emma would always say, you hush and leave that baby here. My Timbird needs me. And now I'm going to skip a few things to when I was 5 years old. My mom was single and struggling to support 3 kids on her own. So when she met a charming and successful guy who promised to give her the moon and let her quit her job to focus on raising us, she married him, and we moved to a town that might as well have been on the moon, it was so far away. Emma was such a big part of my life. From the moment I could talk, I always just called her grandma. She was my grandma. So moving away was devastating. I remember leaving her house in tears. Grandma, it's so easy to come here, but it's so hard to go. Luckily, the guy my mom married turned out to be a total jerkwad. Before we moved into his house, he made us get rid of our dog. I know, that's bad enough, but there's more. When I was a kid, I was just bursting with affection. You're telling me this guy's my new dad? Hell yeah. One time I sat next to him on the couch and gave him a big hug. I love you, Daddy. And he shoved me on the floor. I'm not your dad. And that's how I learned about emotional damage. One time, he told my sister to clean her room, and she did about as well as you'd expect a little kid, but she left some socks sticking out of the top of her dresser drawers. How terrible. Anyway, he thought that was a good excuse to unleash all of his pent-up rage. I remember hiding in my room and trying not to cry while I listened to him beat her. And I don't want to overstate it, because I know a lot of people had it worse. Like my sister. I just experienced a taste of trauma, and I turned out fine. At some point, my mom looked through his browser history and found that he had been on a dating site talking to other women. His username was something like Handyman1234. Okay. But the way she handled it was ice cold. She used *67 so her number wouldn't come up on his caller ID, and when he answered, she used a really flirty voice. Hi, Andy. That's the best I can do. Anyway, he laughed and asked who it was, and she said, I want a divorce. And with that, we moved back to a place just a few blocks away from Grandma Emma. We were gone for a year, but we made it home. I'm so lucky to have had her in my life. Emma taught me so many things, but I think the most important was that you don't have to be blood relatives to be family. I love you, Grandma. Becoming a YouTuber has changed my perspective on a lot of things. I think the biggest is how I react to bad stuff. Because if something awful happens, if the absolute worst thing you can imagine happens to me, at the very least, I can turn it into a video. And really, the worse things are, the better the story. So when something in my life goes wrong, there's a tiny part of me that's like, yes! Content! YouTube has turned me into the ultimate optimist, because now, even the darkest of clouds can have a silver lining. So strap in, because my idiot self just went camping with some friends, and so many things went wrong that if we don't make it into a video, I might actually die. New pants! Let's go! It was a beautiful day in Southern California. Like most YouTubers, I live in LA now. RIP Boise, you will be missed. And I had the bright idea to go camping. I should go camping with some friends, I said to myself, like a crazy person, and I called up some friends to see what they thought. I don't know. I'm pretty busy, said Jordan, busily. Please, we'll have fun in the sun and sleep under the stars and make s'mores over a nice warm fire. It wouldn't be camping without s'mores. And, you need to be here at like 6 a.m. Does that work? Okay, but do you promise it'll be super duper fun? Sure. Then I called Hazel and Alyssa and somehow made the outdoors sound like a pleasant change of pace for making videos instead of the Machiavellian hell world we were blissfully unaware of and that would soon consume our souls. They were down to clowns, so I went to Target to get a tent, some water, and a jump on those concrete balls out front because I might be in my 20s, but I will never not climb on Target's balls. Now, there were a few things I didn't buy, and a few of those were even on purpose. Like, in my mind, we didn't need air mattresses. That would be too bougie. If we brought air mattresses, we might as well bring flat-screen TVs. Where would we plug them in? A tree? Also, I didn't think that I needed to drop a ton of money on a camping stove because I saw, like, one Bon Appetit video where teen heartthrob and best YouTuber without a Twitter account, Brad Leone, cooks a steak over a campfire and was like, yeah, I'm an expert. Thanks a lot, Brad. Just kidding, I love you. It turns out that an air mattress and proper cooking equipment are pretty important if your plan is to venture into the wilderness and, you know, survive. Like, you didn't even finish Boy Scouts, you absolute child. I didn't know where a good place to camp would be, so I just kinda picked one. Most of the time, I really agonize over decisions. You know, see the whole picture, cover all the angles. But for this trip, I kind of figured that a campsite was a campsite, and it didn't really matter where we went. Spoiler, I was wrong. So the day came, and we headed up the mountain. The road was twisting and turning, and I kind of started to feel sick, but I wasn't going to let that get me down. We were camping! Further up the mountain, a cute little squirrel scampered out in front of us on that narrow gravel road. And I don't think he'd ever seen a car before because he stood there in awe, as if this 2-ton chunk of alien metal flying toward him was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And I hope it was, because it was also the last thing he would ever see. We got to the campsite, and there were some trees, but none of them were really tall enough or positioned correctly to provide any useful shade. We unloaded all the food and realized that we forgot the marshmallows, and the graham crackers, and the chocolate, so we couldn't make s'mores, but I wasn't gonna let that get me down. We were camping! We sat around for a bit and played some games, got some sun, talked about our feelings, got some more sun. We forgot the sunscreen. Who wants burgers? I pulled out the firewood and started to make a fire, but we didn't have any lighter fluid, and I thought that we didn't need an axe because the firewood was pre-cut, right? Wrong. Okay, clearly I'm not an expert, but I think it would have been easier to get going if some of the pieces were smaller and covered in lighter fluid. Or gasoline. Anyway, I saw this thing about how chips are flammable, so the minute I realized our big bag of chips could be used as kindling, I took it away from everyone. No eat. Only burn. But apparently, bridges are the only thing I'm capable of burning because despite my best efforts, the fire was a ridiculously smoky mess that nobody could get cozy comfortable next to without being blinded by a jet stream of ash and despair. We tried to cook burgers over the fire, and a couple of them didn't taste too bad, but it had taken so long to get things going that everyone was pretty absurdly hungry, so I think literally anything would have seemed appetizing at that point. Even half-cooked burgers that made Hazel get sick and throw up. But none of that could get us down because we were camping.
During the day, the surface temperature of Mars can reach 20 degrees Celsius, or about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If not for the thin, nearly oxygenless atmosphere, we Earthlings might consider it comfortable. But during the Martian night, which is only slightly longer than our own, temperatures plunge to minus 153 degrees Celsius. Far too cold for life, as we know it, to survive.
The sun went down at the campsite, and I gotta tell ya, I would rather have slept on Mars. Jordan had long since set up shop in the Jeep and was somewhat spared from the horrors that were about to befall the rest of us. Hazel was up through the night, sick as ever. Alyssa's extremities were so cold that she had to pretend her feet didn't exist to deal with the pain. Everybody was sunburnt, and to top it all off, the ground was so bumpy and sharp that it really hurt my back. We went to bed early to try and just end it all as quickly as possible, but you can only sleep so much. We woke up well before sunrise and found it impossible to fall back asleep, so we broke down the tents and packed everything up in the horrible frozen darkness. I don't think we left anything behind, but even if my fingers had fallen off, I wouldn't have noticed or honestly even cared. Despite all of that, I still had a lot of fun hanging out with my friends. It definitely wasn't worth it, but hey,
Some migraine attacks catch you off guard, but for me, a stressful day can trigger migraine attacks too. That's why my go-to is Nurtec ODT. It's the only migraine medication that can treat and prevent my attacks all in one.
I knew the day would come eventually, but it always seemed so far away, you know? Imaginary, almost. We had so much time, it felt like the fun would never end. Until it did. I wouldn't. So you know how I'm incredibly confident and definitely not awkward or unsure of myself in any way whatsoever? Well, VidCon Europe happened. And I went to it with Jaden. We've known each other for a few months, but we hadn't actually met until now. I was pretty nervous about meeting in person for the first time and then immediately having to sit next to each other for 8 hours straight on our flight to Amsterdam because, I mean, let's be honest. Until then, I had no proof that she wasn't an axe murderer. Still don't, but we're friends, so she'll kill me last. Anyway, flying with a friend is awesome because airplanes are hilarious. The in-flight magazine had lots of not English bits next to pictures that couldn't ever possibly make sense. Like this one guy who was just holding a duck. What you doing with that duck, man? Are you gonna eat him? The best part about Duckman is that I used my phone to translate the caption and it said, "Test the chops of pork." Which answered, "No questions, Airplane Magazine." This guy had a hat that he seems to like. Scarlett Johansson was taking a nap for some reason, and this sweet briefcase wants you to move over, millennials. Comedy gold. I stole this. Also, I think the guy in front of me was sitting in his chair upside down. We basically spent the entire flight just tiredly laughing at everything. When we walked out of the airport, we just stood there, like, now what? We didn't even know how to get to the convention center. Luckily, a very nice and not at all shady foreign man walked up and asked, "Taxi?" "Why, yes, complete stranger, we would like to put our lives in your hands." He told us to just walk toward the parking garage down the street and he'd catch up. Yeah, that's fine. At least if he murders us, we'll get a good video out of it. But it all went better than expected. He unlocked his car and then went to do something real quick before we left. The only real problem was later when he accused me of messing with his taxi meter thing. We were in the back seat. When I told him we had no idea what he was talking about, he was like, "In my 4 years of taxi driving, it's never done that." Done what? There's a first time for everything, bucko. I got a bad feeling that he was trying to scam us somehow, but since I'm so well versed in the art of doing things you're not supposed to, trademark, there was no way a taxi driver was ever gonna pull a fast one on us. He was actually a pretty nice guy, and we made it to the hotel in one piece, which, by the way, had an amazing floor-to-ceiling window. An entire wall was just a window. So that was exciting, but Jaden broke everything, so we got upgraded to a less cool room. That's fine. I mean, she only ruined my whole trip. While we were waiting for the new room, we went out to explore Amsterdam and get something to eat. I'm from a city that isn't cool enough to have a metro or anything, so we had to figure out how to use public transport. When you buy a tram pass, you're supposed to scan it when you get on and when you get off. But one time, Jaden forgot to scan it as she was getting off, and I got really worried. "Jaden, you're not following the rules." She turned around all dramatic-like. What are they gonna do? Kick me off? And of course, the delirious laughter didn't stop when we got off the plane. We were surrounded by signs written in Dutch that looked real silly to my dumb American eyes. Look at this. That's not a word, that's a short story. I think they had to make the building wider just to fit the name in. Sometimes we'd see a random English word thrown in for good measure, like this ad at the tram stop that said something apparently outrageous about mayonnaise, because, seriously? The best part is when a word is almost English. Like the name of one of the weird restaurants Jaden found on her phone, spelled Y-A-G-O-Y, which I read, "It's Yagoy." With a name like that, we had to go. The thing we didn't know about Yagoy is that it was actually a yoga school that also sells food. Just inside was a big sign, "Show us your feet," which seemed a little forward, but who am I to argue with a laminated sign? So we took off our shoes and picked a table. The lady that runs the place came over all confused, like, people don't come here for the food, but we still got dinner and some tea that tasted like gum. 10 out of 10. When VidCon started, we went to some panels and walked around the expo hall. The craziest part of the trip to me was that about a dozen people recognized me. I mean, I think people were mostly excited to see Jaden, and I kind of cheated by tweeting what I was wearing, but that was so cool. First, thank you. Everyone who came up to us was super nice. And second, are you sure you don't have me confused with someone else? I have like 2 videos. Either way, thanks. On the second day, Jaden was the moderator of the animation panel, which was awesome, by the way. Good job, Jaden. And when it was over, I was the first to clap, so I helped too. Afterwards, Swoozy was taking selfies with fans and generally just being like the smoothest guy ever. I mean, I'm incredibly charismatic, obviously, but Adonde takes it to a whole new level. Swoozy is somehow cooler in person than in his videos. It's disgusting. So Jaden and I went over to the window where Adonde was making a small crowd feel like the most important people in the world and sat kinda next to him. I was trying to play it cool because, can't let Swoozy outshine me too much, but also furiously taking mental notes. After a while, I was like, so, we're about to go get dinner. If you wanted to come, that'd be cool, I guess. And he was like, ha ha ha, no. What? Am I not cool enough to eat with? Am I not up to your standards? Probably not. But Jaden is. You're not gonna hang out with Jaden freaking animations just because I'm with her? That's understandable. Sorry, Jaden. But
Your bug spray should take out bugs. No. En Marshalls, nuestro
This
equipo
is
de
a guy
compras
that
siempre trabaja duro para conseguirte las mejores ofertas en todo lo bueno.
there are so many things to enjoy about the holiday season. Fun decorations, hot chocolate, rampant consumerism. But sometimes the most enjoyable things are the smallest things. And sometimes those small things are dangerously enjoyable. So much fun that somehow you end up spending Christmas in the hospital. So this happened when I was about 7 years old. And the thing you need to know about me is that I love solving puzzles. Not necessarily jigsaw puzzles in particular, but any kind of puzzle, like Rubik's Cube, Sudoku, anything where there's an unknown solution, but everything you need to find it is already in your head. There's something absolutely magical about that to me. So every December, when a small trickle of presents from family and friends would start appearing under our Christmas tree, I saw them as puzzles begging to be solved. It was my annual grand challenge to figure out what could possibly be in those boxes before the 25th. Now, of course, I could cheat. I could peel the wrapping paper back just enough to get a peek at the box. And I won't lie, I may have done that a few times, but not only is that a great way to get into trouble, Timothy, it's also much less satisfying than figuring it out on your own. Shaking the boxes, on the other hand, anything you can observe without tearing the paper is perfectly fair game in my book. Feeling how heavy a box is and how the weight distributes inside is pretty often just enough to solve the puzzle. Maybe you can feel, through the paper, that one side of the box is flimsy plastic. That could be the window that displays a remote control car. Maybe turning it over causes an avalanche of tiny plastic pieces within. That can only be Legos. The problem is that my mom would usually hide anything too obvious until the night before Christmas, which meant that usually the only puzzles left for me to solve were the hardest ones. And I know what you're thinking. Why don't I just snoop? Mom's closet, crawl space, back of the fridge, no dice. Apparently, one year my brother used the old credit card trick to open up my mom's locked closet to find all the gifts she had hidden away. Ever since then, my mom would hide presents at her office. I never had a chance. For my first few Christmases, I never successfully guessed what my presents were. Until one year, when a very peculiar present showed up. And for some reason, my mom decided to just put it under the tree instead of taking it to her office. It didn't come in a box, it was wide and flat, and with what I can only describe as a small cylinder sticking up from the middle, which made the wrapping paper drape down toward the edges, like a really short tent. Fascinating. I puzzled for days, trying my hardest to figure out what could possibly take this strange shape. I puzzled and puzzled till my puzzler was sore, until finally, for the first time in my 7 years, I successfully guessed what a present was. The minute it clicked, I just knew I had to be right. There's nothing else it could be. I was straight up shaking in excitement, frothing at the mouth. I solved it! I had a few weeks to wait before I could find out if I was right or not, but my excitement didn't really die down. I don't know if you've ever experienced the rush of solving a puzzle, but let me tell you, it doesn't get much better than that. One morning when I was taking a bath before school, I noticed a little red spot on my leg. It was kind of puffy, I don't know, but it didn't look good. So I asked my mom, and she said I must have gotten bit by a spider in my sleep. Which, Mom, there are spiders in my bed? The next day, the red puffy spot had gotten bigger, and it was like, oh, that's probably not good. And the next day, there were a bunch more red puffy spots all over, Yeah, everywhere. And I was like, oh, that's really not good. I can't remember exactly how long it took to realize that this wasn't about to stop on its own, but on Christmas Eve, we went to the hospital. Apparently, I was so excited that I broke out in hives. My fragile little body just couldn't handle it, and if Benadryl wasn't a thing, it would have spread to my trachea and murdered me. All of that for the dumbest present imaginable. I just want to reiterate, I wasn't excited for the present. I was just excited that I figured it out, okay? It was one of those coin collector maps with a little slot for a quarter from each state and a stack of quarters. And the worst part is that when my mom saw it, she goes, I guess you really like coin collecting, huh? Boy, it feels good to get another video done. You might have noticed that I've been posting pretty I gave a bunch of my old video scripts to ChatGPT. The only thing hotter than the hot wings I'm about to eat is this video's sponsor, Tower of Fantasy. Tower of Fantasy is a free-to-play, shared, open-world MMORPG on PC and mobile, so you can play it anywhere. Anywhere. And team up with your friends to fight bosses, explore an expansive world, and customize your character with an extensive character customization system. Become the person you always wanted to be but can't, because the laws of physics won't allow it. The latest update has this massive new underwater area called the Grand Sea. It's the first underwater area in an anime open world game ever, which I can tell you is a big deal because I am a professional gamer. In fact, the new update has so much fresh content that I don't know if I'll have time to cover it all. It's got an underwater city. It's got an underwater volcano. It's got an underwater world boss that lives inside the underwater volcano, which can only be defeated when you team up with your friends. So that might actually be impossible for some of you. It's got new story quests. So what do you say? Grab your friends, team up with new characters Lan and Icarus to destroy some evil, and when you're done, try out the new Deep Sea Treasure Hunt game. There's so much fun to be had, and it's free to play. How did I just sit there? But really below, and use my code. What are you going to see today? This man, this will be a bonus with your check to guarantee fit. That's right. Let's imagine you could travel back in time. I can fix things. I can save my mom. I can save your parents. You can also destroy everything. Flash, teeth.
Kroger shortens the time from harvest to home, so you have more time to enjoy your fresh produce.
Want that airbrush look? Just like
Infallible powder from L'Oreal Paris. Full of that coverage for an airbrushed look. Transfer proof. Up to 24-hour wear. Infallible powder from L'Oreal Paris. Wear to work.
I've worked for the Marion County Sheriff's Office for about 2.5 years. Pro of having a small agency is usually the best. We can create lifelong friendships. Some of my best friends I've met at the agency. Being young as I am, I always felt very welcome at this agency. Never had any issues. So I wouldn't change anything about what I do. We're about to go up to a resident reference to a physical altercation in progress. Looks like a couple of people still involved. It seems to be still in progress at the moment. Come here. Okay, come here. Look, talk to me. What's your name? Ma'am, what's your name? Wait, can you get your dog, sir? Yeah. Ma'am, what's going on? Okay, well, right now you're being detained, so if you walk away, you're going to be placed under arrest for resistance. Okay, cool. Okay, what's going on? Not me. What's going on? This is what's happened. Who's he to you? Don't bitch. We're not going to go outside right now, okay? We're going to set you in your face 3 or 4 times. No. Come here. Touch. Put your hands on your back now. Put your hands on your back now.
fine. Okay. And she literally started talking about my mom being strong. So, of course, I defended my mother. I had her mother living with us for the past 2 years. And she literally, look, her son and her mother had stopped her from hitting me. She stripped the shirt off my back. That's when I called 911. I made the call to you guys.
What happened other than the shirt being shredded?
She punched me in the face 3 or 4 different times.
Where at?
Like, in the face. My glasses. I wear glasses. I don't even know where they are right now.
Okay. Where'd she hit you with?
Like, this side and this side.
Okay.
Slapped and hit me. Knocked my glasses off. And I'll show you what she did in my garage. She threw things around just my garage is trash. You want to come in? You're welcome.
Okay. Is that where the argument happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Everybody was in. It's fine. I didn't want her in jail. The only thing I wanted to do was defend the situation because he wants to get her ass beat by me.
Okay. It started in the garage?
I can barely see it. It started right here in this kitchen.
Okay.
So this is what she came out here
Yeah.
and just started trashing the garage right here.
Okay.
This is what she did.
Okay. Do you need meds for any reason? Okay. Look at me for a moment. I'm just looking at your face. Okay. Is that what all this red's from? Okay. Do you have any of that prior or anything other? Any other marks or anything?
I was on the cops on the phone with you guys the whole time she was hitting me.
Okay.
She goes, you piece of you just go back, you want to call the cops. And this is it, this is the end of us. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. But I'm not just going to let you hit me and me act out.
Are you guys married?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You guys both live here? Okay. How long have you guys lived here together?
Less than a month.
Okay. And then you have the kid in common, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's walk back up front. I don't want to check your kids, but
We back here 3 seconds.
Glasses, there's a piece missing.
do I see him? Okay. So he has some red and bruising to his face. And the kid saw him do it. And his glasses are broken and his shirt's all ripped up. Miss Megan, can you talk to me for a moment? Because I want to get your side of the story, so I'm not getting one-sided. Okay, but that's what I want to give you the respect to get your side of the story. Okay, well, I'm going to read you something, so I need you to listen, okay? Okay? I'm going to read you something, okay? No, I don't have to. I have to ask you. No, he's not being detained. You're detained. Okay. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any question if you wish. You can decide at any time to execute these rights, not answer any questions or make any statements. Do you understand these rights, Megan? Okay, well, he has marks and witnesses, so you're going to take in. Okay, Megan, so we're going to go for simple domestic battery, okay? Can you hear me place under arrest for that tonight? All right, Miss Megan. Okay. All right, Miss Megan. Don't have your mirroring light, bitch.
I just wanted her not to put her hands on me. At the end of the day, especially in front of our children. This is the first night I've actually called. So it's like, do I let it get to that point where I snap in my head?
No, you need to call us so it doesn't escalate. Have a good night, okay?
Sorry.
Don't apologize. If you ever need anything, give us a call, okay?
Meet the team behind the team. The coach, the manager, and the sector, all using Chase to keep up with their finances. The coach helps save goals here because she saved for soccer camp there. And check this out. The manager's closeted a tech. Magic. And the snack dad, he's getting paid back. More excited because this team all has Chase. Smart bankers, convenient tools, one bank with power of both. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Finally putting a halt to the hikes, David Kelly has your critical Fed rate forecast. Plus, maybe bull moves. See where Wall Street could be headed next. It's all on Barron's Roundtable and our new trading time. Brought to you by Global X, Beyond Ordinary ETFs.
Somebody would ask her something and she would just walk right past them. Because she didn't know they were talking to her.
I just did not hear. I was hesitant to get the hearing aids because of my short hair, but nobody even sees them. I'm nearly invisible hearing aids are just one reason we've been a friend for over 75 years. When I finally could hear for the first time, I could hear everything. Unlock our best deal of the year.
For most of my life, I've worn a black t-shirt. And mostly they're too short, too baggy.
Using my years of apparel experience, we set out to make the world's best fitting t-shirt.
Since day one, our fresh clean tees were made to offer a flattering fit for all body types, not break the bank. Unleash your confidence at freshcleanthreads.com.
Does your career feel clouded by doubt? Thankfully, you can clear doubt away with the help of our insightful guidance and experience the joy of certainty.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Deborah.
And this is our Timber Deck story. We built the Timber Deck deck. We did it all ourselves.
And we're still married.
Still married. Timber Deck lets us enjoy a space and an experience that we couldn't ever enjoy before. It's like a really special place to live right now.
So many people are overweight now and asking themselves, why can't I lose weight? For most, the reason is insulin resistance, and they don't even know they have it. Conventional starvation